that girls who are gender confused who undergo these procedures, their serious mental health.
Time has expired. I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Kassar.
Good morning. Secretary Kennedy, I have a few questions about who you're meeting with and talking to as you make this nation's healthcare policy and health policy. According to reports, you and President Donald Trump met with the CEOs of Pfizer, Eli Lilly, Pharma, and others at Mar-a-Lago. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you've also met with the CEOs of Pepsi and Tyson and Kellogg's. Is that correct, Mr. Secretary?
We met with people on both sides of the issue.
Yes.
Of course.
The CEO of,
we're going to meet with industry.
yeah, and the CEO of Starbucks as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you know how many billionaires you've met with in your time in office?
I would have no idea.
Well, at least at a cabinet meeting, there's, of course, Donald Trump, Mr. Lutnick, Ms. McMahon, Mr. Musk. So at least 4 or 5. So we've established here you've met with a good number of CEOs, some billionaires. I hear you've even met with Kid Rock. So here's my question. The Trump policy that passed through the Congress was to give some of these ultra wealthy people a tax cut. And part of paying for it, the big ugly bill gives the ultra wealthy a massive tax cut. It's well documented. But part of what pays for it is kicking 15 million Americans off of their affordable health care. And you're Secretary of Health. So here's my question. You've met with the CEOs, you've met with some billionaires. How many people have you met with? How many Americans have you met with that have lost or about to lose their health insurance?
Well, I've met with the advocacy community on virtually everything that we regulate. I've met with more tribes and tribal leaders than any HHS secretary in history.
And I'm grateful for your meeting with tribes and advocacy organizations, but have you met with everyday Americans who have lost their health insurance just this last year?
I meet with everyday Americans every day.
And have you had conversations with those Americans who will lose their health insurance this coming year or next year because of the cuts to Medicaid? Have you met with people who have lost their health insurance?
First of all, there are no cuts in Medicaid. There are no cuts in Medicaid. Look at the CBO report from this week. We are increasing Medicaid spending by 47%
so we've got
the next 10 years.
So over $1 trillion comes out over the next 10 years. Report after report says 15 million people could lose their health insurance.
How is that a cut?
Okay, let's talk about
that. Is only a cut in Washington, D.C.
Have you met with any of the 1.4 million people who have lost their health insurance just this last year from dropping off of Obamacare? Have you sat down and talked to those folks about the fact they won't have their health insurance again?
They're almost all illegal immigrants.
Oh, well, you know what? It sounds like you haven't met with folks like Portia in my district.
We found 1.5 million illegal immigrants illegally collecting Medicaid.
Mr. Secretary, there are people like Portia in Buda, Texas, whose health insurance costs went from $100 a month to $500 a month. People like my constituent Shauna in San Marcos, Texas, her premium went from $250 to $750 a month. Now, $500 a month may not be a lot to you or to some of the billionaires that y'all are talking to, but for these moms with kids, they've lost their health insurance this last year. So have you had a conversation with, how many people have you sat down with that have said, Mr. Secretary, I lost my health insurance this last year. What are we going to do about it?
87% of the people who are on Obamacare are paying less than $96 a month. 54% of the people who are on Obamacare today are paying less than $50 a month.
Well and good for us to talk about Obamacare policy.
By the way,
question is, it sounds like
Democrats had 3 chances to make.
We could talk all we want about the past.
Tax credits.
We could talk about.
Why didn't you do it?
We could talk about the past.
Why didn't you do it when you had the power to do it?
Mr. Secretary, just like you, I'm new here. I'm responsible for what's happening right here and now.
Yell at your colleagues.
My question, Mr. Secretary, is have you met with anybody that's lost their health insurance? And it sounds like the answer is 0. So my question was, You've had time to meet with the billionaires. I know it's a lot of fun to meet with Kid
It's
Rock,
not true. I have met with people
who have lost their health insurance because
People
of
come up
the
to me.
policy from this last year.
Yeah, people have come up to me and said that they've lost their health insurance, and I talk to them.
And what have you said to them? How can you explain to them how, as you're trying to make America healthy,
I
that they
try to
now
find them-
can't see a
I
doctor
try to
anymore
help
because
them,
of the
point
policy?
them to other options.
Eh,
And President Trump is trying.
When somebody,
now
so
to
when
create-
somebody's health insurance cost goes up $500 a month because of Donald Trump's policy, I don't see how you could
The-
honestly
the
tell them
insurance- the
how you're going to
prime-
make this better
listen,
for them.
It is the Democratic policy to benefit billionaires. The insurance companies' stocks raised by 1,000% after Obamacare was passed. The money was not going to Americans. It was going to them, and it was you who did it.
The gentleman's time has expired. We need to move on.
Chairman,
Time here.
it just sounds like he's met with nobody and been able to explain why it's okay that this policy kicks them off their health
I
care.
now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Kennedy, thank you so much for being here today. I know that my Republican colleagues and I have admired your work on making America healthy again and really cutting down on the waste, fraud, and abuse in many of our government programs. Since President Trump was sworn into office on January 20th, his entire administration, as you know, has worked diligently toward the goal of improving our federal government's efficiency. I happen to serve on the subcommittee for higher education and workforce development, and a strategy that the administration has used to improve efficiency and interagency agreements are of great interest to me. Between the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services, I believe 3 IAAs titled the Education Department's Foreign Medical Accreditation Agreement, the Child Care Access Means Parents and School Agreement, and the Family Engagement and School Support Department of Education and Health and Human Services. My first question to you is, how has that transition gone of moving education programs like C-Campus and NCF-MEA from the Department of Education to Health and Human Services, in your opinion?
Well, so far, I have not heard of any bumps. I can't tell you all the details. And I have not. I will hear it if there's a problem.
Right, I understand that. So when discussions regarding the IAAs began, were there some specific benefits or things that you saw that Health and Human Services could actually bring to these education department programs? I know you mentioned earlier some of them just belonged or fit better in Health and Human Services. What are some benefits you think maybe we've been able
Well,
to see?
in terms of the foreign policy issues, CDC, we're in 64 countries around the world. We have one of CDC's major portfolio items is foreign policy, and so international relations is what we do, and that fits perfectly with what we're doing. The other functions are mainly healthcare functions. They're related to public health and disabilities and special education, and those fit perfectly, align perfectly with what we're already doing and what we think we probably can do better than the Department of Education.
Right. Well, with those 3 interaction agencies or interagency actions in place, are there plans for HHS to enter other IAAs, either with the Department of Education or other agencies that maybe as this efficiency effort is being made, that you can see coming in the future that will help improve government efficiency?
Yes, there are, and we are talking to other agencies about that now.
Okay.
It's not something that I would be prepared to go into details.
I understand, completely understand. I also want to, switching gears real quickly, I've been encouraged to see the administration working to restore common sense policies across all agencies. And it's already been touched on by several of my colleagues here today. One of those policies is prohibiting the transgender medical interventions on children. It was also referenced a little earlier today, the executive order. And the executive order from January 28 states it's the policy of the United States that it will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so-called transition of a child from one sex to another, and it will rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these destructive and life-altering procedures, end quote. Now, some reports that I've seen have shown that many hospitals and health systems have actually temporarily or indefinitely rolled back the transgender surgery and treatment for minors and some young adults because
which I would like to submit digitally for the record. My son Jordan Davis was murdered in a shooting at just 17 years of age. Simple answer, yes or no. Do you believe that gun violence is an epidemic or a public health crisis?
I would say it's an epidemic. I think it's a law enforcement issue and not public health.
I find it kind of absurd to hear you say that. I really do.
You think I should be regulating gangs at
I think,
HHS?
Secretary, it's my time. I think it's kind of absurd to hear you say that. So can you tell me how many children were killed by fluoride toxicity in my home state of Georgia in 2024?
Fluoride toxicity? Probably none.
You're right. The answer is absolutely zero. So can you tell me how many children were
Fluoride
killed by
doesn't kill you.
fluoride across the country in 2024?
Fluoride doesn't kill you. That's an absurd question.
Again, that answer is zero. So how about,
Nobody would answer that,
how
ask that
about,
question.
I'm reclaiming my time. How about by firearms? Can you tell me how many kids were killed in shootings across the country in 2024? You can see right behind me.
I can't read it.
3,865, over 10 a day. That's more than drownings, more than car accidents, more than cancer, and certainly more than fluoride. It is far more than many of the things that you choose to focus on in
Fluoride
your
doesn't
time
kill
as Secretary.
people.
I'm reclaiming my time, Secretary. It's obvious that gun violence is an epidemic, and it is both a public health crisis. I know it, and so do the thousands of parents who are burying their kids in this country every single year. But what I don't know is how you can expect the American people to take your opinion seriously when you try to tell them that they don't need to worry about the leading cause of death for their kids.
I never told them
I'm
that.
reclaiming my time. While you tour the country to talk about the supposed dangers of fluoride, you should focus your efforts on things that are really killing our children in this country every single day. We have limited time here, but I also want to ask you about your comments about people with disabilities, especially about people with autism. During your first press conference as secretary in April of last year, you said, and I'm quoting, "Autism destroys families, that these are kids who will never pay taxes, never hold a job, never play baseball, never write a poem, or go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted," which I would also like to submit for the record. The truth is that the
Can I respond
majority,
to
I'm
that?
reclaiming my
Without
time.
objection, it'll be
Thank you.
submitted.
Thank you. The truth is that the majority of people on the autism spectrum can do all the things that you
Of
have
course they
mentioned.
can, and I never said they couldn't.
Some people with disabilities do need direct care to assist them with activities like going to the bathroom, but that does not mean that they are somehow less than or unable to lead fulfilling and productive lives, as you
And
have
nobody said they
implied.
were.
I'm reclaiming my time. I'm asking you here today, Secretary, to apologize for spreading lies about people with autism and their families. Will you apologize for those remarks that you've made?
Of course not. Then if you let me explain, I'm happy to. I was talking about people with profound autism, not people who are, who have lower impact autism. I'm talking about people who are nonverbal, non-toilet trained, head banging, stimming, toe walking.
Okay, then since you
Hundreds and hundreds of people have written me letters thanking
what
me
you really
for those
meant,
comments.
since you're explaining what you really
I-
meant, can you apologize to the thousands of families that do not believe what you're just telling us now?
No, because if you look at my
You
comments,
refuse
it
to
was clear
apologize.
who I
I
was
find that
talking
very,
about.
very sad. I find that very, very sad. It should be very easy for you to apologize if that's not in fact what you
Those are
meant.
crocodile tears, Congresswoman.
And for all the families that have children with autism, I'm very
you-
sad to
listen,
hear you say
if
that,
you wanna
because
deal
those
with
families
autism,
are
God.
dealing with the kinds of conditions that many people just don't even understand.
If
The
you wanna-
president is
if
trying
you
to
wanna
close
deal
the
with autism,
Department of
come and talk to
Education.
me. If you
If
want
that
to soundbite,
happens,
keep
I'm
talking.
reclaiming my time. The president is trying to close the Department of Education. If that happens, services provided under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, including special ed, may move under your jurisdiction. This is unacceptable for so many reasons, but one of the most
The
important
gentlelady's
reasons
time has
is this:
expired.
no parent wants their son or daughter's education to be in the hands of a man who openly admits that he does not believe in their children. And I yield.
The gentlelady's time has expired. I now recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary,
panel voted against recommending the combined measles vaccine for children under 4. This is true?
It was dangerous.
We know
that
now that
particular
over
version.
90% of measles cases in 2025 were among people who were unvaccinated or whose vaccination status was unknown. That's correct? According to
You
the
think we should have
CDC,
given
it
a
is.
dangerous vaccine that all the
In
science said?
just the first 3.5 months of 2026, the year we're in right now, we've already seen an additional 1,700 measles cases. I assume you're aware of this, according to the CDC.
There's a global epidemic.
You have also pushed vitamin A as a treatment for measles. That is correct?
Yeah, every
According
major
to
health
the America's
organization in the world
Poison
recommends
Centers,
it.
vitamin A overexposure among children increased by nearly 40%. And in this time frame, children in the hospitals with both measles and unsafe levels of vitamin A has occurred, correct?
I'm not recommending unsafe levels. I'm recommending what every
the
major
Americans-
international
America's
health
Poison Centers-
organization
The
recommends.
American Poison Centers agrees. You characterized your response to one outbreak in Texas as a model for the rest of the world, even as the number of measles cases climbed. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, have you ever taken steps to undermine medical guidelines rooted in science? Because we can look at your record, sir.
Oh,
I
not.
serve on the Science Committee. At the beginning of this year, the CDC tried to slash the childhood vaccine schedule from 17 recommended vaccines to 11 before it was blocked by a judge. Hepatitis A, B, RSV, multiple vaccines were demoted. Do you dispute this charge, sir?
You think that we should recommend interventions
These
that have
vaccines
not been safety
have saved
tested?
countless lives. A 2024 study estimates that childhood vaccines have saved 1.1 million children's lives and prevented more than 500 million illnesses in the last 3 decades. Doctors, researchers, and medical experts have spent years working to not only understand illnesses, but also prevent them. Your actions restricting these vaccines have a grave impact on our country.
Happy
And
to
while
talk
you have
about it.
waged war against established medical science, you've also attacked life-saving research on cancer and Alzheimer's. You have implemented measures that have raised costs, kicked families off their insurance, and made it harder to get coverage.
You're just making
Devastated
stuff
rural
up.
hospitals. Look, to top it off, Mr. Secretary, I got a copy of HR 944. Do you know what it is?
I
It's
can
your
Google it.
impeachment articles, sir. You have abused your office, you have gutted America's public health, and you have sacrificed our leadership in medical research and innovation. Americans today are less safe under your watch. Children are dying of diseases that we thought we had eradicated. You can smirk, sir, but I answer to the people of Michigan, and they have told me you should be ashamed, you should resign, and if you refuse, Congress should remove you from office.
Is that-
I yield back.
The gentlelady's time has
question?
expired. I now recognize the gentleman from Missouri, the good Dr. Under.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for being here. I'm glad my colleague got her little X clip there to, hopefully it'll go viral for her like she intended. Secretary, thank you so much for your work on just so many areas. But one of the things I wanted to highlight today
impacts one population over another, but you cannot in addressing the Black maternal mortality.
Does that match these reports I've seen to the general trend that you're seeing as a Secretary of
Yeah,
Health?
we're seeing that trend across the board, and particularly with the suspension of Medicaid and Medicare funding for the hospitals, that host these procedures. I think that's going to have a universal impact.
Well, I want to join my other colleagues that have mentioned it in thanking you for your role as Secretary of Health and Human Services to take action to end chemical and surgical mutilation of children. And I'm very grateful for your service. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
I thank the gentleman. His time hasn't expired. And I recognize the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is Black Maternal Health Week, so I'll just start there. Secretary Kennedy, I'm sure you're aware that Black women are at least 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. The vast majority of those deaths are preventable. Black women in my district are more likely to die during pregnancy than their peers in 97% of US cities. Your written testimony mentions maternal and child health 4 times, but from what I've seen, the NIH canceled grants researching Black maternal health. Your administration's fiscal year 27 budget proposes eliminating Healthy Start, which is one of the federal government's primary community-based maternal health programs. And you've made it a priority of HHS to end diversity, equity, and inclusion. So yes or no, my question for you is, if a medical school or a public health school educates students about addressing the Black maternal mortality crisis, would you consider that an illegal DEI?
No,
No, you would not?
no.
Great. I do hope for the medical schools, the universities, and the accreditors, your administration has been threatening that they're watching this and take this directive to continue teaching about and addressing the Black maternal mortality crisis. And I expect your agency to restore and expand funding and support for that work. Also, yes or no, do you think consuming more protein and avoiding Tylenol will prevent Black women from dying 3 times more likely during a pregnancy?
I doubt it.
Tylenol
Doesn't kill
So
you.
then why aren't you putting forth serious policies that actually address the health crises in this country instead of just these unserious conspiracy theories and this wellness influencer mess that
Do
we
you want me to answer that question, or are you just talking?
No, it's a
to
question.
We are doing more on maternal health than any other administration.
No, I said Black maternal health.
On maternal health.
The Black maternal health.
That includes Blacks and whites.
But the thing
everybody.
is that they're actually not the same outcomes, which means that we need specific and intentional interventions for Black maternal health and Black
Can I
infant.
finish? I'm saying.
Are you going to answer that?
Yeah, we have right now, we've implemented a perinatal pilot project that we're in 220 hospitals around the country. And we have reduced maternal health mortalities by 42% of those hospitals by providing them protocols.
Can you please share what the reduction has been for Black maternal health?
Across the board, it's 42%.
But Black maternal health still has worse
Well,
outcomes than other people.
I wouldn't know. It helps everybody.
But it
You
isn't.
object to that?
Okay, thank you. It is not. I do want to just, for the record, state that it does not help everyone. Your agency told programs to remove a list of nearly 200 words and phrases from their funding applications, including the word Black. Do you have an idea of how we could solve the Black maternal mortality crisis if we can't say Black?
President Trump is trying to end division in this country, not so
Sorry,
division,
not
which has been
eviction.
done during the last 4 years. That's what DEI did. It divided
Wait,
people. It polarized people.
No. We're not talking about eviction. We're talking about
I'm
healthcare.
calling about DEI.
We're talking about healthcare
Yeah.
disparities.
You're
So what we're
talking about-
asking is if you attack DE&I and then we have a crisis that impacts one population over another, but you cannot direct specific spending or research or interventions to that population, how do you solve the problem?
Do you think the federal government should be paying for DEI?
I think the federal government has a vested interest in ensuring that its citizens survive childbirth.
Well, we are meeting that obligation.
We are not.
Oh, that I can explain to you how we are. if
You
want.
have not done so far. But also I would say that, we can improve healthcare for everybody at the same time as helping the people who are most likely to die. That's what DE&I, well, first of all, DE&I makes sure that we have Black doctors or women doctors, or that we're talking about the fact that we have a mortality rate that is not matched by any other country as what we would call developed as ours. Really quickly, in
No,
yesterday's Ways and
we
Means
put
Committee
bill-
hearing, you denied saying that every Black kid is now just a standard put on Adderall, SSRIs, benzos, which are known to induce violence, and those kids are going to have a chance to go somewhere else and get reparented. Why did you deny saying this?
Why did I deny payment?
No, why did you deny that you said that every Black kid is now just standard put on Adderall, SSRIs, benzos, which are known as to induce violence, and that you would rehome them?
Well, it's largely true that Black kids, because it's easier to handle people, and a lot of the public
And you're going to
schools-
rehome them?
No, I never said that we should rehome them for illegal drugs. Psychiatric.
Gentlelady's
drugs, which
time
every
has
Black kid is
expired.
now just-
Okay, I just wanted to know if that was him for the record. Thank you.
Thank the
I yield
gentlelady.
back.
I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, Mr. Secretary. I just wanted to first start by echoing part of what my colleague from Texas said about the expiration of the ACA subsidies. This is a serious issue for a lot of people in this country right now who have seen an escalating increase in their premium payments. I will say I think it represented a failure on both sides to come together and find a solution. I had a bipartisan bill. There were a couple of others on this issue. But partisan politics got in the way, and now people are having to pay a lot more, and things have become even more unaffordable. So I do hope that we can still, even at this late hour, find a way to solve this problem and make people whole. But what I actually want to talk to you about today is the new food pyramid, which I think is one of the most important documents our government has issued in a long time. And there's a website to go along with it, realfood.gov, that is, I think, the most user-friendly government website I've ever seen. I'd highly recommend people check it out, realfood.gov. And regardless of what anyone thinks about you, Mr. Secretary, about the president, or about me, or anyone on this committee, I would hope that this is something that we can all come together around, because some of the statistics you've already cited and that are in your supporting documents here are truly jarring. 70+% of adults in the US being overweight, way more than any other developed country. Third of adolescents have prediabetes. As a result, we have lower life expectancy, maybe 2.5 years of reduced life expectancy because of these issues. Chronic disease consumes, as you mentioned, 90% of our overall spending. So you've addressed some of this already, but can you just explain briefly, how it is that our food supply in the US is linked to all of these problems?
Yeah, I mean, it's a confluence of different forces. Most potent driver was the GRAS standards. GRAS is a loophole known as generally recognized as safe, and it was put into the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act in 1948 to allow companies to include ingredients that were traditional, like vinegar and salts and wheat and these kind of things. But it was hijacked by the food industry so that they're now using it to put any chemical that they make in a lab without even informing us what it is. And we now have 10,000 ingredients in our food, and we have no idea about the safety of almost any of them. The Europeans don't have this, and they have only 400 ingredients in their food. Oh, that explains why partially why Americans are so sick. And then the other thing was the food pyramid itself was the creation of corruption. The people who were writing it were captured by lobbyists, certain companies that were trying to promote margarines and ultra processed foods and to get rid of protein. And that's what they did. They did false studies that were fraudulent that said that protein caused heart attacks. There's zero evidence of that. So they took protein off. And as a result, today, 70% of the calories that Americans eat are ultra processed food, and it's just poison.
So that's why you've inverted this, and the sort of overarching principle, as it suggests, is to eat real foods. And then you have, various guidelines that people can check out. Eat the amount that's right for you, prioritize proteins, consume dairy, eat vegetables and fruits throughout the day, incorporate healthy fats, focus on whole grains, limit highly processed foods, specially added sugar. Notice the yogurt here is unsweetened. the question is then, how do we actually, cause this to compel change across the country? That's a very, challenging task, but we do have a pretty good, maybe precedent for this when it comes to cigarette use. We've seen a reduction of maybe 4 out of every 10 adults smoking in the 60s to 1 out of every 10 adults now. So are there any lessons to be learned here? And what do you think the keys are to actually compelling adoption of these habits and practices, changes in institutions in a way that will actually reverse these long-term
We
trends?
don't want to use compulsion. Americans should always have choice. If you want to eat a Krispy Kreme donut, you should be able to do it.
Sure.
But we have the power of the subsidy program, $405 million a day from USDA to WICS, Head Start, school lunches, Indian tribal services, and we are using those to drive changes in the dietary culture. So, for example, I'll just give you one example. Brooke Rollins has required that every retailer that gives out, that accepts food stamps, has to double the amount of real food in their facility. And that's just one example, but there are many, many, many. We're changing food in the military. We're changing hospital food. We're doing this across the board to drive these changes and create a revolution in food culture in this country.
That's fantastic. And yeah, the more we can do that to encourage this pyramid to become more widely known and practice, I think it'll benefit our country enormously. So
Gentleman's time has expired,
Congressman.
even though I'm grateful here about Krispy Kreme donuts. Now I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Mannion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your testimony today. Earlier in this hearing, Representative Takano had referenced Truth Social posts from the president, and I believe I heard your response to be that he was the most sane president. Do you care to comment any further, or is that your?
Well, if you look at that Truth Social post, I was pointing out the last line of it says, "God bless the Iranian people." So it was clear that he was sending a nuanced message. He was sending a message of brute force and violence to the mullahs to incentivize them to change, but also sending a message of love and compassion to the Iranian people. So you can look at it and say, oh, it's insane that he'd make this kind of threat. But he's a deal maker. He's a bargainer.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate that. More sane than your uncle?
He's very, very sane.
So I grew up in a place called Tipperary Hill.
I'd say he's more sane than Uncle Joe,
And
Uncle Joe Biden.
Your uncle, your father were heroes to the Irish Catholic community. Your uncle, a Purple Heart recipient, a World War II veteran and naval commander, a hero, a member of the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, and a president whose term ended in assassination and is widely regarded as someone who navigated our country through possibly the most challenging time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. There were 2 pictures that hung in the homes of Irish Catholics in my neighborhood, separate pictures. One of your uncle, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and the other of the baby Jesus, the light of the world, 2 separate pictures. So I thank you for being here today. I have various concerns about the direction of HHS under your leadership, but today I'd like to focus on some particularly harmful attacks made on the disability community. Your actions and statements, Mr. Secretary, have contributed to real fears, anxieties, and consequences for millions of families. I know some of my colleagues have raised these with you as well, but I want to again point out some of the statements that I think reveal a bias and a credibility issue. You previously said that people with autism, and again, I acknowledge your statements previously in this hearing, that these are the most profoundly autistic individuals, but the impact it has on families and statements that they will never hold a job, never play baseball, never write a poem, never go out on a date, or never use a toilet unassisted, those are incredibly impactful. Additional statements that individuals with autism and the epidemic that exists is catastrophic to our country and destroys families. As these words weren't insulting enough, you've also insinuated and insulted the intelligence of American people by linking autism to vaccines, Tylenol, and circumcision. Mr. Kennedy, not long ago, any of these claims would have been disqualifying for someone in your position, especially given a lack of scientific or medical training on your part. These would have prompted dismissal, and we would have dismissed these statements as ridiculous and unverified theories. But in this administration, falsehoods are routinely given a platform and are perpetuated. Incompetence is also often rewarded, as is loyalty, and there's very rarely accountability for statements such as this. Mr. Secretary, as a science teacher at a college level for almost 30 years and the former chairman of the Disabilities Committee in the New York State Senate, I have worked intensively with individuals with disabilities and their families, understanding their concerns. So that experience goes back a long time. And as a country, we have made massive strides in improving disability policy. But now, under your watch, we're moving in the wrong direction. A $1 trillion cut to Medicaid that you have let happen and have tried to downplay is dismantling many important programs, including the Administration for Community Living at HHS, which oversees programs supporting senior and individuals with disabilities. And now you and Secretary McMahon seem to be working behind closed doors to dismantle the Department of Education and expand HHS's role in key educational programs. Unlike you, career public servants at the Department of Education have worked for decades to develop expertise, expand educational opportunity, and protect the rights of students with disabilities. I cannot believe that we are talking about shifting critical programs that are enshrined into law and into the Department of Education over to HHS. In lieu of going over on my comments, I will end my time here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman's time has expired. Yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania and the champion of whole milk, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Secretary, good to see you again.
You too.
Always appreciate the opportunities to be able to work with you and your leadership and your team that you put together. My first question really is, it's about the Community Services Block Grant Program. That's a program I'm just very passionate about that program. It's the original anti-poverty program. And it really doesn't matter what the source that led somebody into poverty. It really helps provide a pathway out of poverty, which is, I think, this is what we want for folks, right? To be able to realize the American dream. Certainly an important program in my state of Pennsylvania, helping low-income individuals and families get on a path to financial independence. Currently over $13.5 million in fiscal year 26 congressionally allocated funds to my state are being held up at OMB. And Secretary Kennedy, I'm just seeking your assistance in working at committing to help immediately release the 5 months worth of CSBG funds currently stalled at OMB. We need them to get those funds out into those communities. So, helping to lift people out of poverty, providing them a pathway forward.
Thank you for that comment, Congressman. We're working as hard as we can to get that money out the door.
No, I appreciate that. Anything I can help with on that, I'm all in. It seems very effective. We're actually working to reauthorize Community Services Block Grant Program, and reauthorization is important. It's making sure it's currently on the question of Krispy Kreme donuts. I'd have to say only with a glass of whole milk. That would be the best combination. Now, I've worked for over a decade to restore whole milk in our schools, cafeterias, and was honored that my legislation, Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act, was signed into law by President Trump in January, allowing schools the flexibility to offer flavored, non-flavored, whole, and 2% milk. Just common sense, really common sense and science. Secretary Kennedy, I was pleased that the dietary guidelines for Americans that were released earlier this year recommended whole full-fat milk. Question for you: how would including whole milk in school meal programs improve nutritional outcomes for children?
It's absolutely critical. It's criminal that we took it out of the schools for 2 generations. We had 2 generations of kids who were not growing up with the best access to the finest source of micronutrients that build their brains, build their body, build their bones. Now putting it back in the schools, you know, some of the schools are having trouble because they have contracts with vendors that don't include it, but we're working with them to make sure that they all are serving home, and the kids love it. Kids are drinking it because it tastes better. And, you know, people's bodies crave fats, and you have healthy fats in whole milk that you can't get anywhere else. And it tastes better than, you know, 2% or skim milk. The kids love it much more. And it's crazy that we deprived all of those generations of kids on this critical food source.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that your colleague and a good friend of mine, Secretary Brooke Rollins, is preparing to, I anticipate, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, to see published in a congressional record just clarity that this will apply not just to school lunches, but for breakfast and, quite frankly, any time that meals are served within the school system. Any thoughts on what steps that can we take to help schools successfully transition to offering whole milk?
The biggest help we need, the biggest impediment to getting good food into the schools is that a lot of schools have abandoned their kitchens. Oh, you know, when I was a kid, every school had a kitchen, and that's not true today. And, you know, we need to be able to help them build kitchens and to get, you know, to purchase cutlery and to purchase cutting boards and all the things they need to actually be making good food there. What we're finding is that good food is actually, in many cases, cheaper than the processed and ultra-processed foods that they were getting. It's much cheaper than fast food. In fact, our program in the military, we're shifting, Pete Hegseth is shifting the military from the terrible, appalling food that they had that only a third of the troops were eating. And we were paying $18.50 a day. We're now on 5 bases, about to go into 20 bases with good, rich, whole food, a lot of it locally sourced. And we're feeding them at $10 a day. You know, good food is not more expensive as long as you're cooking it at home.
Well,
Gentleman's time has
thank you, Mr.
expired.
Secretary.
While we'd like to talk more about Krispy Kreme and chocolate whole milk, we're going to move now to the gentlelady from Connecticut, Mrs. Hayes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Firearms are the leading cause of death for children and teenagers in the United States. Pediatricians, trauma surgeons, emergency physicians, and public health experts have repeatedly described firearm injury as a public health emergency. As my colleague stated, asked during your confirmation hearing if you believe firearm violence was a public health crisis, you answered with one word, no. You went on to say, you believe that HHS can explore solutions for the behavioral health and substance abuse epidemic without compromising sacred rights and freedom. According to EdWeek, which measures school shootings at K-12 schools resulting in injury and death, there have been 26 school shootings since you were sworn in. According to the Gun Violence Archive, which measures any gun discharge on school grounds, there have been 240 incidents since you were sworn in. In 2026, we have seen school shootings in Rockland, Maryland, Detroit, Michigan, Crandall, Texas, Bulverde, Texas, Ferguson, Missouri, Oklahoma, Bethesda, Maryland. As you stated, I understand that you don't have full jurisdiction over the law enforcement side, the DOJ, the FBI. And since this committee has refused to respond to my request for a hearing on school shootings, I want to ask you about the things you do have direct jurisdiction over. HHS holds jurisdiction over public health aspects, focusing on mental health services, trauma support for survivors, data collection to prevent gun violence. Since under your tenure, we've seen threats of cuts to SAMHSA, cuts to school-based mental health programs, cuts to the CDC staffers who work on research and prevention, cuts to bipartisan community violence prevention programs. They've been terminated. So, Mr. Secretary, since you were sworn in and now have full visibility of the harm of gun violence to children, Has your position changed? Do you believe gun violence is a public health crisis?
I believe it's a public health crisis, but it's not. We don't have jurisdiction to.
The things you do
enforce
have
it.
jurisdiction over.
And we're doing those. So we're doing more studies on the etiology and cause of gun violence, the first that have ever been done in years.
Sir,
Uh,
I have to
we're doing
stop
those
you.
and
I only have
right
5
now.
minutes, and I
You
apologize,
asked the
but
question, so I answered it.
well, I want to know specifically why the research and the funding has been cut for these programs that address trauma, that address student survivors, that address school-based mental health programs for students who are affected by gun violence. You're
As I
putting out
said-
all of these programs, all of these studies about keeping kids healthy. Keeping kids alive is part of keeping them healthy.
And we're trying to do that by doing the studies to understand why people commit mass shootings.
But you've also cut
And
funding.
that has not been done before.
You've also
It's been
cut
done by the
funding.
Trump
You've also,
administration.
sir, I'm going to have to ask you to exercise some restraint. You're a Kennedy. You know how oversight hearings work.
Well, don't
And we
pretend
don't
you're
want the
asking
second
for-
graders to think that your interruptions are rude, disrespectful, or impatient. So I'm going to have to ask you to just allow me to finish my questions.
Well, don't pretend you're
In
asking
my home
questions
state of
you're not gonna give
Connecticut,
me a
where I
chance
was a
to
school
answer it.
teacher, in the classroom on the day 20 children were slaughtered and 6 educators, we worked really hard to see firsthand how to invest in our communities and provide prevention. Connecticut has created some of the strongest school-based violence prevention systems in the country through multidisciplinary threat assessment teams, early intervention programs, and partnerships that help schools identify concerning behavior. I put forth a bill, the School Violence Prevention Act, to begin to collect data to see how we can have federal programs to address these traumatic outcomes for kids. Many of the things that we fought for in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act have been cut. So I have to ask you, what have you done to address the health of children? You point out so many other things about the food they eat, all these other things. What have you done to keep kids safe from gun violence outside of commissioning a study?
As I said, we have no law enforcement. Congress has not given us law enforcement.
I'm not asking you about law enforcement, sir.
What we do is we study issues and we study problems, and we're doing that with gun violence,
Can you
which has not been done
specifically
before.
a study that you've commissioned?
We did it. We've done. I think it's almost near completion. We did a study on school shootings to look at what the shooters have in common, what medications they may have been receiving, whether they were on SSRIs, whether they were on benzos. And we're expanding that now across the agency to do even more of those.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
I'd like more information on that study because I'm unaware of it. I yield back.
Happy to
The
provide it
gentlelady
with
yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from Arizona, Ms. Grijalva.
Thank you for your time today. I have to say, as I listen here, with all the health initiatives that you're espousing, I have grave concerns about the HHS bill budget and the cuts that are being proposed. I spent 20 years on a school board and saw firsthand how support systems children have or don't have outside of the classroom shape their outcomes. At the most basic level, children can't go to school if they're sick, they can't learn on an empty stomach, and their families can't get ahead if they can't access health care. I'd like to first talk to you about your proposed cuts to medical research. I was reading an article this morning that talked about your affinity to perform your own medical research. You apparently once cut the penis off a road-killed raccoon to study them later. You speak fondly of medical research, yet your budget cuts show that the National Institutes of Health are going to get a cut of more than 12%. This level of cuts would halt promising research, force layoffs of scientists and research staff, and undermine America's global leadership in medical intervention and innovation. What specific diseases do you believe deserve less medical research?
DEI.
Okay,
I
so
think we got $1 billion.
do you have a
Got it.
specific program, a specific disease that deserves less funding?
I
you
would
can
say
identify?
we're putting $1 billion into DEI, and DEI research has never cured any disease. It's never produced any new drug.
Okay, so between
We had a
February
bill-
of 2025 and April of 2025, HHS canceled or froze more than $180 million in National Cancer Institute grants. Were you the one to approve these cuts to cancer grants, or did that come directly from the White House?
We're giving the highest, one of the highest budget increases to NCI.
Can you
in
just
this
answer my
proposed budget.
specific question? Were you the one who approved those cuts, or did that come from the White House?
As I said, we are raising the budget for NCI, for the National Cancer Institute, in this budget.
Yeah.
It's one of the only agencies throughout my sub-agencies throughout my entire agency that's receiving a raise.
Okay, so Secretary Kennedy, you have the responsibility to tell the truth to this committee, and here are some examples of cuts. In April of 2025, HHS canceled an NIH grant regarding strategies to reduce cancer and chronic disease in the Arkansas Delta. In 2025, a grant selective targeting of pancreatic cancer was cut. In March of 2025, a grant, the automated digital imaging for cervical cancer screening. The list continues to go on. You've also noted that SNAP can be used to purchase Whole Foods. And we look at some of the recent data, just in Arizona, the district that I represent, 424 fewer people, including 180 children, have lost food assistance since the enactment of HR 1. My constituents are writing to me telling me that they're hungry and cannot afford food. As the Secretary of Health and Human Services, will you make a statement here today that you oppose hunger in this country?
Well, I oppose hunger in this country, and we're the first administration to be doing something about getting actually good food.
Thank you.
The
I'm
children.
grateful that you're standing against the Republican hunger cuts. And if HHS spends $21 billion on physician training, yet only 1% goes to community-based programs like teaching health centers that actually reduce primary care shortages, why are we underinvesting in the models that work?
For rural health,
For community health centers?
I just put $143 million into community health centers for physician retention. We also put $50 billion into the Rural Transformation Process program, which has a lot of money for
Yeah.
rural healthcare frontline physicians, to retain them, to keep them, to do residencies there. It's unprecedented.
So just so you know, only 1% of the funding that you've talked about actually goes to teaching health centers and community health centers, and health centers lower costs and improve outcomes
You asked
for
about the
Medicare
problem.
patients. Yeah.
We're trying to solve the problem of rural residencies and rural access to rural personnel,
Well-
and we're doing more than any administration in history to do.
So unfortunately, there are 5 rural health centers in Arizona that are at risk of closure because of cuts from this administration. So what are you doing to ensure that every Medicaid patient can access a community health center?
There's 39 million Americans in community health centers, and my personal belief is that it's the most effective health centers in our country. What they're
Absolutely.
doing is better than any, and we're making big investments to make sure that they continue. We've raised the funding in this budget for community health centers, and then I'm finding other pockets of money to funnel, as I did last week, $130 million.
I would really like to see the data that shows that, because the rural health communities and health centers in my district are suffering greatly under this administration.
Well, I announced the
Thank you, and
program.
I yield back.
I announced the
Thank you.
program in Arizona last week at a
Gentlelady.
community.
The gentlelady's time has expired, and I would recommend making direct contact between the two of you. So thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Desaulniers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I want to start with something I think we agree on. I've had a long time since local government, and in the district I represent, the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area, we've been leaders on attacking the tobacco industry and protecting kids in particular. So you have made a comment, which I laud, that you want to wipe out e-cigarettes in the country. I put a lot of work into making sure that Juul was held accountable for what they were doing, yet we still have almost 2 million American kids using illegal e-cigarettes. So where your jurisdiction is in enforcement, unfortunately, you're cutting enforcement. How will you do what you have said you want to do, and I believe you want to do, is wipe out e-cigarette use, and in this instance, illegal e-cigarette use, by increasing enforcement.
Do you mean vapes?
Yes.
Oh, the
Vapes, Juul, companies like
we're
Juul.
increasing it for, I mean, the budget increases enforcement for Chinese vapes. And I've already been, I was in Illinois a couple of weeks ago doing a major enforcement action. We confiscated about 1 million, Pam Bondi and I, about 1 million Chinese vapes. There's an argument for vapes. Vapes reduce cigarette tobacco smoking, which is
No,
much
sir,
worse.
that was the argument Juul made, and I'd be happy to have a further conversation. There is-
I'd love to have that conversation.
All right. So on another important matter, and I think, and this goes to SAMHSA behavioral health, you and I have some similar family background. My dad was an alcoholic, and he took his life many years ago. So since then, I've spent a lot of time on behavioral health, mental health. Mr. Wahlberg and I have done initiatives on this and prevention. And we now have, according to the Center for Disease Control, a real mental health crisis in this country when it comes to kids. CDC did a report in the prior administration that almost half of adolescent, pre-adolescent young women, young girls, women, were predisposed to depression and suicidal ideation. So how can we work together to prevent that? How can we work together using research from SAMHSA and other research around the world to make sure we start making an impact and dropping these really serious behavioral mental health issues for future generations?
Congressman, it's a top priority for me. I would love to hear your ideas. We just announced the Great American Recovery Plan. I'm working on with Catherine Burgum, with my cousin Patrick Kennedy, who you know, and with many other people who are top in their field, including, I think, Jonathan Sharon, who you probably know from Los Angeles. So we're looking for the best ideas, and President Trump wants us to implement them. This is a issue that is a high priority for him. And as you point out, for me personally, I would love to talk to you about what you think that we could be doing better. And if there's new ideas, we want to hear them.
One of the big challenges I see, both from my personal background, which I think you share parts of that certainly, is the deployment of the amazing research that NIH, SAMHSA, the University of California, San Francisco, not far from my district, is doing remarkable work. So the deployment of that research is a real challenge. Since parity, we had a 300% increase in Americans asking for mental health and behavioral health services. We've had a 300% decrease in young people going into the field because they can't pay their student loans because of the cost of school and training. I talked to 2 young psychologists who said they had $350,000 in student debt. They didn't have any money. They were clearly had a calling to this field, but they didn't have any way that they could recover their costs. So that's another thing I think is of extreme urgency. And then very lastly, in the county I represent, and being a former county elected, we spent a lot of time, thanks to my predecessor, Mr. Miller, the former chair of this committee, doing prevention. But with the big ugly bill, we've taken all of that prevention, primary care clinics, a lot of the work you espouse. Mr. Miller was very important in changing the nutrition standards in this committee on free and reduced lunch to make sure all the things that you've talked about actually deliver, that we're bringing farm to food, really wonderful food to kids. And we've changed in California. I had a bill in here about getting schools to be able to get grants for kitchen equipment that was more appropriate to your last question, more attuned to preparing food like that. I spent 35 years in the restaurant business. So changing that and changing away from prevention under the big HR 1 is a huge contradiction to what I hear you say frequently, that it's about prevention and knowledge. And in the county I represent, they've already seen this huge increase, and it's going to get larger and larger.
Needs to wrap up.
Because all those people who we were working with in primary care and prevention are now ending up with higher acuity in the county hospital room, a hospital emergency room. So if you could spend just a second talking about moving
Yeah.
away from prevention and into crisis, which this administration's doing.
We'll have to
I
carry it
look
on in
forward to
another
working
format,
with
but because the time has expired and we are running close to the time limit. So I now recognize the ranking member, gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being with us today. Let me make a couple of comments before I get to questions. The first is I want to join in the bipartisan support for the Community Services Block Grant. It's a strong program and has good support. We want to make sure that stays as strong as possible. The other is to put the savings in the HHS budget in context. We were talking about a savings in the budget of $16 billion. The big ugly bill added $3.5 trillion to the debt with interest, maybe $4 trillion. Rounding, that would be to the nearest $100 billion. So we're not even a significant part of a rounding error. But these painful cuts are still very meaningful. The gentlelady from North Carolina talked about the school meal equipment grant, which helps schools prepare healthy meals, but that program was zeroed out. Another comment, you had an exchange with the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Norcross, about mental health parity. We had a hearing yesterday with the Employee Benefit Security Administration where the administrator could not name any sanction he could impose to punish an insurance company for failing to comply with mental health parity. Apparently, he needs legislation because he didn't have the authority. So as you work with Mr. Norcross, I think he's got legislation pending. We may have to do legislation to fix that.
We lost our case on that, unfortunately,
Say again?
Congressman. So we lost our case on
So we can help you fix it up with legislation. Mr. Secretary, the GAO is wrapping up responding to a request I made last year about DOJ's access to data and IT systems within many agencies, including HHS.
Both sides of the aisle. We want to succeed. Changes are tough, but changes are underway, and I'm looking forward to seeing if they work. As I said, I think they will. Until that time, we'll have further hearings, but seeing no more questions to be asked, having gone through the time period, I call this meeting an adjournment. Thank you.
And that about wraps that up there, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank all you folks that dropped in. I prefer doing it this way instead of giving commentary and going with the back and forth. You can hear exactly what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing to destroy this country. For those of you that are on disability, for those of you that have children with autism, for those of you who just go about your random everyday living instead of going up on these streams and listening to these Monday morning quarterbacks, get the source from the man's mouth himself. If you trust Robert F. Kennedy to run this country as far as the health is concerned, you might want to go ahead and get on a couch somewhere yourself, because the definitive answers that he gave today says everything about him. He is they're talking about DEI. This was a blatant example of DEI. He does not have a degree. He does not have anything to say that he could offer anything when it comes to scientific fact. But they're going through slashing this, slashing that, slashing this, slashing that for the everyday Americans. Trying to sit here and tell us that the United States of America is one of the best countries in the world when it comes to healthcare, when it's easily fact-checked and verifiable that we're not. In the top 10 free countries in the world, we are last. somewhere like 38th in mid-range countries and 68th. There's some so-called third world countries that have better health care than we do. But yet we have Robert F. Kennedy up there trying to tell us that health care is not going to go up, that they're not cutting Social Security. They're not cutting benefits from this or that, him and Linda McMahon. But we'll revisit this again, folks. Again, thanks everybody for coming out. Char Willie, Choco Kitty, I got to say, I'm quite impressed when I see someone playing the tickling the ivories the way, especially when it comes to the classics like Chopin and Rachmaninoff and all this. You got to be dedicated to play that type of music. So shout out to you. Y'all check her out over there. Go over to Choco Kitty's channel, Choco Kitty 7. And then like, share, and subscribe. For those of you who do have channels, go ahead and drop them in the description there, or the link, or leave me a message, and I'll make sure I tie you into what we're doing over here. Information is key, folks. You can't go, information does not come to you. You got to go get it. Okay? You got to go get it. All of us could have been anywhere today listening to Jay Prince and what he doing. Appreciate y'all coming here, taking the time out to see what's really going on in the world. Y'all have a good one. Yeah, sure. Check it out. She was really, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It's quite peaceful.